This is the Grow Your Clinic podcast from Clinic Mastery. We help progressive health professionals to lead inspired teams, transform client experiences, and build clinics for good. Now, it's time to grow your clinic.
Welcome back to another episode of the Grow Your Clinic podcast. My name is Jack O'Brien, your host. Thank you for joining us again. As always, really appreciate your listenership. And right from the top, if you want to grab any of the links or contacts from today's episode, you can head over to clinicmastery.com/podcast. All of those details will be over there. So today we have another guest joining us. I'm super excited to welcome to the podcast Tim Bransdon from Wollongong Podiatry and the Running Lab. Tim, welcome. How are you, mate?
I'm great, Jack. How are you?
I am fantastic. Friday afternoon here at the time of recording, middle of COVID, and straight off the back of this, I'll be diving into a Hunter Valley Shiraz. So I'm good.
I think I have a Mountain Goat fancy pants and then ease my way into a nice whiskey later on.
Plenty of time for that. Cool, mate. Well, we're going to dive into your story of clinic ownership and also how you've set up a bunch of courses, education, and really differentiated yourself. But before we do, got a couple of icebreaker questions. Ready to go?
Ready to go.
Cool. Number one, what are you reading or learning right now?
I am doing a masterclass by Greg Day and Rod Harris, who've put together an incredible collection of, at the moment, 10 practitioners, 10 different separate masterclasses, and something that I know that they intend on growing. Reading, I don't have a book open at the moment. I'm not always the best book reader, hard book reader. Audible, definitely love some Audible, but I've had a little bit of a break from that because I haven't been spending as much time in the car. So I haven't had as much time to listen to it. At the moment, really enjoying the practitioners they've got from around the world who are presenting on this masterclass.
That's awesome, mate. Love it. You're right. I missed the drive, especially with COVID. So I've actually got into running a bit, which is unusual for me, but running more so just to listen and get out of the house away from the kids for half an hour.
Well, that's what's kept me busy in the last couple of weeks. Everyone running more injuries, and needing more help.
Number two, mate, who inspires you?
Look, I got to say my wife and my kids, and I don't want to be cliche with that, but my children all the time, just, from growing from a very, very young to the things they come up with, the things they do. And then my wife herself, she's from America. She lives in a foreign country. She started her own business last year, and, she's teaching me things. And that's the beauty of it, even though she's only just over a year in, and hopefully I made some of the mistakes she doesn't have to. Mm-hmm. But yeah, definitely my wife, my kids.
Love it, mate. What did you want to be growing up?
I had no idea. I was one of those going through school that literally didn't know. The worlds of physiotherapy and the like definitely interested me. Mm-hmm. Played a lot of sport growing up. Still try and keep pretty active now. And I never even looked at what I'd have to do to be a physio. And actually, when I got into uni, I got in on an advanced entry for osteopathy. Okay. And it just sounded pretty cool. And I thought, well, physio, podiatry, osteopathy, first year, they're quite similar. So if osteo, which was brand new at the uni at that time, first time they'd offered it, if it wasn't my cup of tea, I could always transfer out. And in the end, I actually changed to podiatry before I started university. Right. Because everybody I told that I was going to be an osteopath, they all said, "What's that?"
Sure. New South Wales, no idea, right?
No, like down in Victoria, that it's been present for a lot longer. And actually in the Wollongong area that I'm in now, there are fantastic osteopaths who've got well-established clinics. But yeah, at the time it was like, okay, if nobody knows what an osteopath is, who's going to come see me? Sure. And that's where the transition to podiatry happened. And I'd say I haven't looked back. There were definitely parts of podiatry that I didn't really enjoy at university. I certainly didn't pursue afterwards. But yeah, from there, once I worked out that my podiatry degree is really a ticket to learn more,
sure,
and experiment and do whatever I want to do and to take patients to another level, that's when I really started to enjoy what I do.
Mm. And finally, what's a motto that you try and live by?
Happy, healthy, respectful. Something I push on my kids. And, happiness, fantastic. Be respectful, fantastic. Healthy, healthy just encompasses everything.
Mm-hmm. Easy, simple. Love it. All right. So connect the dots from not really knowing what to do through to playing a decent amount of footy across a couple of codes and then coming out as a private practice podiatrist. Tell us a bit about the footy journey, mate. I
was a leaguey probably from about 10 or 11. I started playing. I like to say I made my first tackle when I was about 16. So I actually played in a very good team, but I'd come home and the family would say, "Did you touch the ball today?" And I'm like, "No." And, we won 71-0. Right. So eventually there was a bit of fire in the belly and started playing. I played with the Western Suburbs Magpies in their juniors with rugby league. And then I got dragged along to this university games thing that it was rugby, and I had no interest in rugby. I had good friends who played rugby, and I had no interest in the game, and went along to this, well, more of a drinking week than a rugby week.
Yes.
But the actual game of rugby that I played that week was very different to league, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. That was it. I finished up that season with the Magpies, switched over to rugby union, played for West Harbour in Sydney, and then went overseas to England for a couple of years, 6 or 7 years on the Sunshine Coast. And then that's when it was time to hang up the boots, as they say, but basically sit there and say, let's look after the body for the rest of my life and stop banging it around.
Mm. And to what degree did that rugby background or football background contribute to what is now your sports and health profession?
Incredible amount. I was working as a podiatrist up in Queensland. I was doing what I was taught at university. I had a great boss, great mentor there, which was the one that literally guided me to showing me that I could do not just what I was taught at university, but through all the treatments I'd had, the injury that I'd had, surgery, broken bones, you name it, is that how I treated feet was very different to how we treated the rest of the body.
Right.
And it had me asking questions. And it came down to the fact that I could help people resolve pain. I could resolve pain in my own feet through orthotics and the like, but I didn't really have a fix.
Sure.
And I started to work out that I really didn't know how to condition feet, how to train them, how to make them stronger, how to make them actually function better organically.
Mm-hmm.
And through some great physios that I had, particularly I'll credit Greg Craig up on the Sunshine Coast and how he rehabilitated my knee. And then I actually opened a sports clinic upstairs from him. What I learned in that time that I was there as a fly on the wall in his clinic and having patients go back and forth was just phenomenal. And that set me up to ask more questions, dig deeper. And what I do now is effectively what I consider what we've done for the rest of the body for a long time, what we'd expect going to see a physiotherapist, is that I've applied that to feet. What I learned in the strength and conditioning world, which was a passion of mine when I trained, I enjoyed being in the gym, I enjoyed being coached by great coaches, is I applied that to feet. And it was through experimentation at first. And well, actually, I'm going to say it's still experimentation. I consider my entire career and the medical system experimentation.
Sure.
It's trial and error. I can never tell a patient how they'll come back next time, but I'm going to put everything in place that they come back better than today. And then as they come back and tell me where they're at, I've got to problem solve and think, how do I get them to go forward? So yeah, my sporting exposed me to great therapists, exposed me to sort of run-of-the-mill treatments. But for the most part, I got exposed to some great therapists, great strength and conditioning coaches, and then started to think, well, why don't we do this with feet? Like, when do we train feet? And I'll leave that for you. When do we train feet?
Right. Well, it's an afterthought. Chuck them in a shoe and they're just a vehicle to the rest of the body, generally.
Well, we go into the gym to train everything else. But nobody goes in and asks the PT or says, my grand goal is to have jacked feet. So that's how it came about. I tell whenever I'm teaching, whether through my workshops or students, I say, none of this is foresight. I'm not that smart. I'm not going to think and plan that far ahead. But in hindsight, I can sort of lay it out clearly and it sounds like, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it just took questioning and experimenting at first with my own feet, family's feet, patients' feet, and then just slowly developing systems that help people.
I love it, mate. So tell us, what came first, clinic ownership or the courses and training and education?
Clinic ownership.
Okay. Run us through the highlights of that journey. Was it something that you had desired or did it stumble across you?
When I was moving from the Sunshine Coast to Wollongong, I was inquiring about what sort of work was available in Wollongong, and there was definitely opportunity to work, but there was no opportunity to progress what I'd already started in Queensland.
Right.
So I would have been just sitting in a room, sort of cutting toenails, doing a little bit of biomechanics, but no real space to do any biomechanics. So I actually got a job in Sutherland a couple of days a week just to pay the bills whilst I was going to start a business in Wollongong. Literally a week after I moved down from the Sunshine Coast, Wollongong Podiatry, that I now own, came on the market. I spoke to the owner and went, oh, that doesn't sound too bad. And I went down and observed the clinic for a day. And what sold me was the rooms had space. Okay, great. That's the physical space I need to experiment and do what I want. But my admin team, my reception team, who are still there 10 years later, and it's 10 years this month since I bought Wollongong Podiatry,
Nice.
they were phenomenal. I was just observing them on the phone, what they knew about feet, blew my mind. Like, they knew more about feet than when I graduated, and probably even 5 years after I was working. Every time we have students, they often ask, like, what's their qualification? I say, technically nothing formal, but they were just amazing. And that was why I bought Wollongong Podiatry. And that was it. 10 years later, we're still going strong. We're about to make a big shift, the first one in 10 years.
Right.
And we're actually joining forces with a local foot and ankle surgeon. And we're basically going to rehab all the foot and ankle surgery that is done by Dr. Dares down here in Wollongong.
Yeah, right.
Now, this is something that's been a little bit bizarre to me for many years, is that when you have knee surgery, shoulder surgery, hip surgery, you often have prehab. You go and actually see the physio. We'll work through some of the motor control or strength exercises before surgery. And then we pick up, as soon as we can afterwards and get the people moving. But the general premise with feet and a lot of foot surgeries is that you have the foot surgery, you're in your boot, you're in your joggers, you might be in your orthotics, and off you go. And it's just been that way in the industry. So Dr. Dares is the first that I've met that has been proactive in saying, no, we need to rehabilitate the feet. And just so happens that I'm in the exact same locale as her. And after one conversation, it was like, all right, we're buying a warehouse. We're building, as in Dr. Dares, we're buying a warehouse. We're building a clinic, Wollongong Foot and Ankle Centre. And how would you like to be part of it? And it was almost that quick. It was like, brilliant. So already we're moving in 2 weeks, but already have been rehabilitating these surgeries for the last 6 or 7 months. So the platform's already had through the Running Lab and Strong Feet, which is just my work, but just applying, well, how are we going to get this person from an Achilles rupture or from bunion surgery or any surgery, because they've had a lot, besides the Achilles rupture, a lot of the surgeries have had a lot of dysfunction pre-surgery.
Sure.
They haven't been moving well for a long time. And then they have surgery and mobilization. How do we get them back to the best health we possibly can? And so we're developing protocols on how to do that per condition and setting sort of standards of where we've got to get to before we move to the next level. So yeah, it's a big shift for the actual clinic, but super exciting. 2 weeks out, and then we're in a new location, custom built for us. It's gonna be fun.
So good. So if I'm hearing right, clinic ownership for you has been more about enabling you to explore the bounds of clinical practice and educate and empower team along the way. Yeah. Spot on.
For all the headaches that owning a clinic or any business can be, and anybody that owns a business knows that it's not always a smooth ride. It's rarely a smooth ride, but it's enabled me to, yes, experiment and to explore. And if I want a gym out in my clinic, I put a gym in my clinic. And, a lot of people walk and go, oh, most podiatry clinics don't have that. And I say, that's okay. I just do what I do. And yeah, it's literally given me the scope to, I couldn't do what I do now if I didn't own the clinic, because I'd always have to be asking permission and, I want more equipment, and the boss might be like, what for?
Sure.
You've got all this stuff. So definitely.
So 10 years is no mean feat. Congratulations. Pardon the pun. So what have you done well that's worked and enabled you to be sustainable, and where do you see some of the shortfalls or opportunities?
I'd like to think what we've done well, or myself personally, is get better at mentoring my staff as they join. And when I joined the clinic, I feel like each staff member, I've got better at mentoring them through and getting them comfortable working at Wollongong Podiatry, being able to offer quality treatment to anybody that comes in to see them. In terms of clinic ownership, what I haven't done well, like everybody manage the finances, plan ahead, be on top of anything from taxes to super to all those things that they catch you and then you think, shit, and then you're behind the 8 ball. And again, over time, got better at that to the point where, if there's a big tax bill due, the money's there. And it's not through just having money sitting in this big account, because that doesn't exist in business, certainly not in any I know, that it's just like, oh yeah, we'll just pull that from there. But just doing reports, getting stats, getting percentages, and then sitting there and allocating accordingly so that you're ready, hopefully, for anything that pops up. COVID was a spanner that none of us expected. And so that for me was about being flexible. And my words to my staff were that we're a very robust clinic. We're strong. We've been around a long time, and everybody's going to hurt through this, but we'll be right. And so whether it was through telehealth or any other means that we needed to adapt, we've got plenty of space. So we divided the team. So we had less staff on. We had 2 completely separate waiting rooms and a spare treatment room. So we had all the space in the world to distance. But yeah, so it's probably, again, the strong points, learning as we go, and you do have to learn from mistakes, but then Clinic Mastery and any other sort of coaching team out there, it's about trying to teach people the mistakes that you're going to make before you make them. Right. It's about trying to say, hey, we've all done it. Mm-hmm. And even with my wife starting her own business last year, I said, well, here's all the things I did wrong. You've lived through it with me. Yeah. Let's make sure we're on top of this from the start.
Yeah. Love it. It's like healthcare in a lot of ways. Prevention is far easier than cure. And it's not rocket science. It's all been done before. So clinic ownership comes first and then the running lab and Strong Feet. So what are they in a nutshell for the uneducated?
Okay, so the running lab was, I learned to run after I stopped playing rugby. I'm talking long distance. I was a winger in rugby, so I did a lot of sprint training and track sessions, like a lot of different sports, but it was very mechanical, very methodical, lots and lots of drills, and a work piece. High intensity work piece. Mm-hmm. But the work piece wasn't the bulk of the session time-wise. Rugby was the same. Cricket was the same. It's all drills. You know, if you want to teach your kids to swim, you don't just throw them in the pool and see what happens.
Right.
So you don't. Okay. Mm-hmm. And when I stopped playing rugby and started doing a little bit more running, started experimenting with different ways to run and what is the correct way to run and what is not the correct way to run, you know, just like learning squat patterns. And none of it really worked. It usually made things worse, which is what a lot of the research says as well. I definitely lived that. But then I did a couple of courses with 2 separate running coaches, and it was all drill based. And all of a sudden my running improved through doing drills, not through trying to run different, but through doing drills to train the patterns. And I sort of went, oh shit, this is not rocket science. As you said, it's all been done before. Mm-hmm. So I was looking over my shoulder thinking all these runners that are coming to see me to get, or to learn what the magic shoes are or orthotics or whatever it is they need to solve their injury. Who the hell's teaching them to run?
Right.
And it was like, if you go down a track, there are coaches down at the track coaching people, eyes on all the time. But that is 0.0001% of runners. All the other runners are people at gyms, people playing field sports, people just jogging around the block. Mm-hmm. And, you know, if they're repeating poor technique times thousands per run, mm-hmm. well, if they were doing that with squatting, they got injured, we'd be like, yep, okay, that's understandable. So for me, it came down to, well, okay, if nobody else is doing it, why don't I? Okay. So I spent a great deal of time trying to work out, well, how am I going to implement this in a clinic?
Sure.
Like I'm indoors, I'm enclosed. And so that's when I expanded my clinic into the office next door. I added the half of what I already had in the clinic in terms of space. And this took about 9 months to work out how to do it. Got software developed so I could have dual cameras from the side and in front, right in front of the patient. Curved treadmill. The only ones in the country at that time and barely in the country were Woodway. Right. And it was just a little bit more of a natural run compared to running on a motorized treadmill, which is, it's not normal. It's not what people do outside. And in hindsight, the Woodway curve, in my opinion, is not the most natural treadmill to run on. But as I started to work through the running lab and people were improving, and again, it's just through patterns and drills. It wasn't through trying to tell them. I've never told a single human which part of their foot should hit the ground first. You know, foot contact is a consequence of good movement patterns, not a cause of good movement patterns. Is that runners were improving, and it really just drove me to sit there and push that a little bit further. Then came the first workshop. Now, the stuff I was doing in the clinic was pretty structured. It was over a 6-week period. And then it was like, well, why don't you do a workshop? And this was a business coach at the time pushing me to do that. And I thought, I don't know, what can you change in a day running? Right. Like when I did it, it was over 4 to 6 weeks that people I trained with noticed. They're like, Tim, what have you been doing?
Sure.
It was just drills.
Mm-hmm.
So I held my first running workshop at my gym, not my gym I own, my gym I went to, mm-hmm. and had a lot of the coaches and my training buddies do it. And what sold it for me was that at the end of the workshop, we were going through before and after videos of each runner.
Right.
And all of the participants were commenting on all the things that improved in the after video. No, it wasn't perfect. And the person watching the video was like, yeah, but look at that. Look at that. I'm still overstride. I'm still doing this. But everyone else was like, yeah, but look at your posture. Look at your head position. Look at the up and down oscillation that's not there in the after video.
Oh.
And this was in a day. And so what sold it was not the changes that were made in a day, because they're not permanent.
Mm-hmm.
Unless people go away and work on it. What sold it was that people were recognizing other patterns in just that day.
Yeah, sure.
So that's when the running lab in terms of workshops was literally launched.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started traveling around doing that in gyms and going to New Zealand and around the country. And it was fun. Did a lot of work in the CrossFit world and, trained some very high level CrossFit athletes. over the years, and that was fun. And then as I'm sure you're heading towards again, where the workshops, the Strong Feet workshop was effectively, that was just my career. It wasn't anything new. It's everything I do in the clinic. And I had business coach at the time. I had young twins. They were, I think, 6 months old. And they're saying, so when are you going to do this workshop? I said, I don't know. There's just too much going on.
Another thing.
Maybe in a couple of years. And they said, April. I was like, okay, what year? They're like, no, April coming up. And, I can thank them to this day because they pushed me to do it, even though it didn't seem like the right time in my life. And a lot of those people that came to my first ever workshop in Sydney, I think we had 26 for 2 whole days. A lot of those people I'm still in touch with now.
Yeah, wow.
I'm still quite close with. We communicate. They get in touch with me. I get in touch with them. And then it flowed from there to, doing the Strong Feet workshops in different parts of the country. Then I started to get a bit selfish and started to make people come to me and do the workshops in Sydney and then in Wollongong. Now, it's not something I do all that often. And the reason is that giving up my weekends now, it takes a lot, and it's just family time that I value so much. And so I pick and choose when I want to do them. And then things like COVID blow up the last two workshops I had planned. And I don't know when the next one will be. And people have asked me online, will you do an online one? I'm very big on the interaction through the workshop. I could offer online. I mean, I do that in respect to courses for the general public or anybody else. But the interaction over that weekend is where the value is.
Yeah.
You know what it's like. You coach online, but then when you have your masterminds or whatever it is, where you get the people in a room, you don't have to reinvent the wheel there. It's the community, it's the networking, and the value in that's it's huge.
It's huge. So I'm curious then, what's some of the tangible benefits been for the clinic in running these workshops and kind of having them sit in parallel? Has there been much of crossover in terms of either commercial or branding awareness for your podiatry clinic?
Definitely. It's a positioning. So it's positioning in the market. I remember when I first started having students come to the clinic, I'd have fourth years for a month at a time. And, my wife might say to me, oh, don't teach them all your secrets. You got to keep some things up your sleeve. And that's the thought process you have. And it's the same as if I'm teach everybody everything I know. But as we work out, the more you teach, the more people want to know. And the more they respect you for sharing. So as I shared more and more and more, and I won't pretend I'm the best on social media, keeping on top of that all the time. But again, as I shared more, people get this thirst for wanting more.
Sure.
And you can give away your blueprint. Like I could give away my blueprint of all my exercises that I use, and certainly do in the workshops. And we used to say this on the football field too. We can give the other team all our moves.
Yeah.
We can sit there and give them the names. They're still got to defend it. They're still got to, sit there and work out a way to stop it, and flip that to sharing everything that I do, which is my Strong Feet course. It's not giving away any secrets. It's just sitting there offering information so people can then go and take that and mold that into their own work. That's what I say. It's not about doing things my way. It's about me teaching what I do. Great. This is everything I've learned so far. But in 3 years' time, if you came back and did this course, the principles will be pretty damn similar.
Yep.
But the methods, there'll be new ones. There'll be drills that I don't use anymore because it's just a better way to get to the end goal.
And I think, Tim, that abundance mindset and approach will really resonate with most people listening. But yet we all have that inner demon or the voice that says, don't give it away, or what if someone takes advantage, or competition, those types of things. And it sounds like you've had to wrestle with that, or at least amongst you and your wife had to figure it out. But has there been any times where there's been competition or imitation? And what are some of the lessons that you've learned through that process?
Definitely imitation, and definitely you're sitting there thinking, son of a bitch, that's 100% mine. Like I did that. And then I think, well, where did I get it from?
Right.
Like that exact exercise or whatever it might have been, or wording, whatever else, where did that come from? No, I didn't steal that out of someone else's book. No, I didn't sit there and but it's been molded from everything that I've borrowed, that I've paid for, that I've learned, that I've asked questions. Like literally it's every practitioner I've ever worked with, seen as a patient. It's every conversation we've had. It's anything that we chat about. So in some way, shape or form, like I can say it's mine, but no. It's just it's a molding of everything that I've done thus far. Personally, professionally, watching my kids. I mean, my kids have taught me so much about biomechanics, phenomenal amounts. just sitting there watching them, observing and thinking, hang on, they're not using their hips as much as what I thought we should be using our hips. They're using a lot more ankle or vice versa. And just watching as they develop and as they grow, and then exploring from there. So yeah, you have those moments, and then I think, no, it's good. It's good. And also, again, I am offering this to people. I'm offering, there's a 66-page manual that was probably the hardest thing I did putting together for, the strong feet, and then updating it as we go. So there's heaps of information in there. And it's, that sort of, again, material is what I'm offering to teach people, to try and sit there and say, right, here's what I know about strength and conditioning and rehab for feet. I want you to take that. I want you to mold it. I want you to play with it. I want you to, take the principles away from the workshops more than the methods.
Sure.
The methods are easy, but there's no A, B, C, or A plus B plus C equals D. It's the principles of it all. And I say that the participants, hopefully one day I'm at one of your workshops learning what you're doing.
Love it. I think that I'm thinking about the listeners and the clinic owners. And so the encouragement there is have that abundant mindset, have that open-mindedness to give it all away, knowing that it does build your brand, and that there are some commercial carryovers from teaching into the clinic. I'm also interested, Tim, in the parallel and how that you've essentially diversified your career. There's clinical, and then there's the teaching. And so you're not dependent on one source of income, one source of clients, those types of things. How has that been beneficial for you, having two separate streams running at one time?
It's fabulous. When we're in the clinic, we're exchanging time for money.
Yep.
That's it. We're exchanging time for money. And that's the model of healthcare. When you go online, it's not time for money. Is that I used to love, I'm not going to lie, I used to love waking up in the morning and there'd be an email that someone had bought my Strong Feet or Running Lab course online anywhere in the world.
Yep.
They bought it. And that money is in my account within a day or two, which is brilliant. And yes, I put work into that, but I didn't put work in at 2 a.m. when this, money came through.
Sure.
So having the online material there was great. And then doing the workshops was a fantastic added income, because that didn't have to get eaten up with anything in the clinic. That money didn't have to go to anything in the clinic. That was effectively my money that I could use with my family for whatever I wanted. And I could choose how many weekends I would do workshops. I mean, there's a limit. I mean, there's only so many you can do before you're trying to find, hey, anybody else want to do my workshop? Where are you?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's at the point now where I pick and choose if someone wants to do a workshop, if I'm traveling, and if they got the numbers, fantastic. I mean, early this year's nuts. I think it was last year, I took my wife to Adelaide, did a day of work in a gym. And then the next day we went to a winery, had a nice long lunch. And basically the whole weekend was paid for by that work.
Great.
And so whilst I might not have made a big profit out of that weekend, it wasn't the aim.
Sure.
It was go to Adelaide, and I enjoy teaching. I enjoy the workshops. It's not a drain in any way, shape or form. So I taught all day Saturday. And then, as I say, the rest of the time, had a lovely weekend with my wife away. So it's given me scope to be able to travel and work, travel to, again, going to New Zealand a few times to do workshops. So it's definitely not a drain. It adds that extra income, and you can make with that income what you want. You can aim to, let's say you want to renovate your house. Let's say you want to grow your clinic. You want to put that money back in. It's addition. Right. It's not eaten up anywhere else.
Yeah, love it. So if you had any words of advice or wisdom for the clinic owner, the health professional that's thinking, I got this idea, I got this methodology, I'm thinking about stepping out and pop my head up and becoming an expert, inverted commas. I'm sure they're often thinking about, what are my peers going to say? Or is it going to work? How's it going to be received? Can you speak to those listeners? What would you say to them?
I've got my fair share of heat from my profession and others on the work I do. It bothered me for a while. And then after a while, you realize that that's just the world we're in. The internet's very easy to be a keyboard warrior these days and to question things that are different. But it's something that doesn't bother me in the slightest now. I don't get as much of it now because hopefully people are seeing that what I teach is not one-sided. Sure. I make orthotics, but I teach also how to strengthen feet to potentially not need orthotics. Mm-hmm. And it's trying to think about what you're going to do when someone else is doing it is the problem. So I didn't think, hey, I'm going to teach people to run. I'm going to have the running lab. I'm going to have this strong feet methodology that I will then go and teach. So trying to plan it out in advance, whilst it seems great, again, I mean, how many people in the world can plan out their $1 million business and it just happens? It's not quite the way.
Sure.
But as I started to, again, just explore myself personally in my own running, that's what led to this. And I'm no expert long distance runner by any stretch of the imagination at all. Clearly not built like a long distance runner. But as I explored that was exploring movement. And that was exploration that then led into my work. And then when it was in my work, it was like, well, hang on, why don't we share this more? Which became the running lab, which became the workshops. And then it was Strong Feet, which again was just my work, which was just a bit different. I always said where I work now, I call it my dungeon because we're in an old shopping center, but we're underground.
Right.
There's no windows to the greater world. So in my dungeon, and a lot of patients like all the time say, oh, why don't people know this? Why isn't this like the norm? Just, education on shoes or otherwise. Mm-hmm. So, well, I'm only responsible for what I do in my clinic. Mm-hmm. I can't be everywhere. But then started to get a bit more public and it grew from there. So it's not about planning in advance, but thinking about what do you do well? Now, I didn't consider myself and still don't an expert in anything.
Sure.
And if I was an expert at anything, it's not being afraid to explore. And now not being afraid to sit there and teach what I know right now, which will change over time.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's a bit of a roundabout answer, but don't try and plan ahead and come up with this absolutely life-changing, nobody else has done solution. Sit there and think, well, what do you do well? What's your background? Oh, I did a lot of gymnastics when I'm young. Well, how does that apply to your work? Oh, well, I don't know. But if you think about it, in some way, shape or form, it will.
Yeah.
And then as that evolves, again, it could grow into anything. It's trying to reinvent the wheel won't happen. Just try and work out what you're good at and what you're passionate about. If you like something, keep exploring, keep experimenting.
To extend on that, you mentioned that explore, which is beautiful, and not be afraid. That's a story for another day around fear and not being afraid. But is it possible for you to be interested in something enough to be able to explore it and then be able to package it up and make it a commercial reality?
Definitely. 100%.
What did you learn in that process of making it commercial, making it palatable for someone to be able to purchase, consume, be a part of?
For my running lab and getting my running lab set up online, I spent about $40,000 in terms of trying to get everything right because it had to be right. I had to have all the bits and pieces. And what I learned with Strong Feet that I probably spent $3,000 getting everything right was that I absolutely didn't. Absolutely didn't.
Health professionals curse, right?
People weren't buying glitz or glamour or perfection. They're buying you. They're buying what you've got to offer. They're buying, a piece of your brain. So what I learned was that you don't have to have all of it and perfect and be the best out there in respect to how something looks. Be authentic. That's why, again, I love to teach in person rather than online. Even though it's me online, it's like, no, I like the interaction. So be authentic, be who you are, and sell that.
Love it. Unreal, mate. Thank you so much for your insights. If people wanted to get in touch with you, check out your clinic, check out the running lab, how can they do that? Where can they find you best on the interwebs?
Interwebs, if you look up Tim Bransdon, spell it almost any which way, you'll find me, but it's Bransdon. It'll usually link to Wollongong Podiatry or The Running Lab, and also Wollongong Foot and Ankle Centre. That's the new venture. That's the game changer for us, and really trying to push the boundaries now of orthopedic surgeon working with a rehab team, which we are podiatrists, but who knows what we'll have overall. And changing how foot and ankle surgery is looked at in respect to, like my Strong Feet work, bringing it in line with what we do with the rest of the body.
Love it. Mate, thank you so much for your insights on clinic ownership, becoming an expert, creating those alternate pathways. Unreal. So thank you so much for joining us. And listeners, thank you for joining us. If you need any of those links, they will be over at clinicmastery.com/podcast. And if you feel like leaving us a review or rating on your podcast player, we would really appreciate that. You can get in touch with any feedback. Tim, again, thank you for joining us on the podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Jack.
Thank you, listeners. Can't wait to bring you another episode again really soon. Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to the Grow Your Clinic podcast. To find out more about past episodes or how we can help you, head to www.clinicmastery.com/podcast. And please remember to rate and review us on your podcast player of choice. See you on the next episode.